Hello and welcome. My name is John Batchelder, and I am the Executive Director of the Dallas Chamber Music Society, here to present another episode of Chamber Music Chats, our video featurette hosting guest artists from our season's roster to engage in interesting casual conversation about all things chamber music. Today, this afternoon, I'm joined by Michael Brown, an internationally renowned pianist and composer who will be joined by the incredible Harlem Quartet on Sunday, March 26th at 7:30 p.m., performing in Caruth Auditorium. Michael, thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, and it's not the afternoon where I am. It's the evening in Germany. But and I'm so honored. I can't wait to come to Dallas at the end of the month. It's going to be really fun.
Well, we are very thrilled to have you. This performance features a special collaboration between string quartet and piano. We'll have string quartet and you performing by yourselves, and then collaborating together as a piano quintet. But before we dive into the program and into some of those details, I'm wondering if you could just briefly introduce yourself, as well as maybe the origins of this collaboration with the Harlem Quartet.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Michael Stephen Brown, as you said. I'm a pianist composer. I've been doing it my whole life. I travel around the world, and I love to create programs that include a narrative, a story, a through line. I love to include my own compositions when possible. And yes, and I love chamber music, and chamber music is a huge part of my life. I think it's something that binds musicians together, and it's fun to collaborate. Well, especially as a pianist, it's such a can be an isolated lifestyle because you don't really need anyone else with the vast solo repertoire that I can't possibly get through in one lifetime. But it's been a thrill for me to have such extensive chamber music experience. I play a lot with the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center and do a lot of touring with different quartets, and one of which, the Harlem Quartet, old friends of mine, and I'm excited to play again with them coming up. And we've done a lot together over the years, and that's been really thrilling.
Yeah, and so you mentioned, Michael, in terms of, when it comes to programming, you mentioned like to have a narrative and sometimes including your own pieces. When can you talk a little bit about when doing a collaboration like this, where the string quartet, and especially a group that performs regularly with themselves, and the five of you coming together for certain performances, can you talk a little bit about the process of programming it, in this sort of combination, and whether it's a tricky process for you all, or kind of where is the line between the balance of how much solo repertoire, the repertoire of the five of you together.
Well, I think with the Harlem Quartet, everything is super easy. It's super easy to play with them. They're so wonderful. It's super easy to put programs together. I think we have like-minded ideas about programming. I think it stems out of what do we want to play at in any given time, what feels good to play and revisit. The Schumann Quintet is a piece that we've played a lot. We've played it several times. I even played it with the cellist Felix of the group in his prior string quartet several times. He was in another string quartet before. So it's funny how life takes you in that way. So it feels like a piece that's very connected to us. And we love to play the Schumann Quintet. So that was perhaps the kind of starting point. It's always good to have like a starting point for programming, as you know. And we thought in this particular concert, wouldn't it be fun to explore something kind of very different that we didn't know at all? Actually, only Melissa White, the second violinist, had played it before, which is the Amy Beach Quintet,
Mhm.
which comes from the early part of the 20th century. I think it was written in 1905. And she, like Schumann, was a great pianist composer, very successful in her time. And the piece kind of has a Schumann-esque sort of Brahmsian wistfulness to it. So it's kind of a nice pairing, a nice foil to the Schumann. It's extremely, I would say, plaintive and sad and almost dark hued, as opposed to the Schumann, which, without, except for the second movement, is really the opposite, I would say.
Mhm.
So it kind of started from those two ideas, and then we thought, well, what could we do should to sort of fill out the program, and they're going to play some of their own arrangements, which are fantastic, and I'll play a couple of solo pieces. Also, a kind of foil situation. A couple movements by Songs Without Words by a composer named Delphine von Schauroth, who is someone I could talk to a lot about. Depends on how much you want to hear about her, but she's sort of a passion project of mine right now, which we can delve into if you really want to, because she's such a fascinating, completely forgotten figure in music history that was connected to Felix Mendelssohn,
Mhm.
and Mendelssohn was connected to the Schumanns, and Delphine was connected to the Schumanns. So,
Mhm.
and I'm actually in Bonn right now, Germany, which is where the Schumanns are buried, and I'm going to go to their grave tomorrow. So all of this is very cool for
Mhm.
me. Um, but basically, the solo pieces I want to play are Songs Without Words, which of course Mendelssohn was famous for writing solo piano pieces, written by Delphine for Mendelssohn. They would get together. She was a young pianist, and he was extremely taken with her talent. And then later on, he was taken with her beauty, and the two developed some kind of a romance. It's really poorly documented, so it's impossible to know what happened. But he wrote her the Rondo Capriccioso, which is perhaps his most well-known piano piece, which I'll be presenting. And
Mhm.
she wrote these songs without words for him, which I'll be playing as well, which are not uh, basically recorded or played anywhere. I can't find anyone else aside from myself. So I'll do this pairing, and I won't give too much away, but it didn't work out between the two, and she married someone else, and
Mhm.
Mendelssohn was completely heartbroken.
Wow.
So, and that's I think that's kind of a through line to the program is real personal connection and love, and of course there's the Robert Clara in the Schumann quintet. Mendelssohn premiered the Schumann quintet
Mhm.
when Clara got sick. So there are just an, a lot of links between all the pieces.
Yeah, some incredible thread work, and in connective tissue, as you said, between it all. I must say too, I'm personally speaking very excited about the Amy Beach because, as you said, it's one that's not performed as much, but also has a spectacularly beautiful slow movement that's just absolutely, I can't wait for our audience members to hear. Well, you mentioned Delphine, so please dive right in because, as you mentioned, a passion project and someone really interesting. If you had to give your sort of elevator pitch for her, if you will, in terms of our audience members, what can they expect from this piece, or are there other pieces you might recommend that they kind of listen to get prepped for the concert experience on the 26th?
They can't. There's nothing they can listen to because there are no recordings of her music online except for my own YouTube video, which we could share of her piece and the Rondo Capriccioso. And we could put a link to that, and so
Absolutely.
they can hear one of the pieces. But I'm actually going to play three of her songs without words. And in this set, Opus 18, there are six,
Mhm.
and uh, I kind of like the fact that they have to come to you have to come to the concert now because you can't hear these pieces at home. It's not like you can skip it and put it on Spotify. I think this basically my elevator pitch is that her music is gorgeous, it's harmonically interesting, and I think in some ways it sounds like Mendelssohn. Pretty much, on that level. These pieces, they are virtuoso for the pianist, who's me. They are poignant and beautiful and surprising. And they're miniatures, so they're like perfect for a salon setting. They're they're very special. I'm excited to present them. And I discovered them because during the pandemic, I was on like a Mendelssohn binge. I was home and I was like, Felix Mendelssohn is one of my favorite composers, and his piano music is a bit underappreciated when it comes to his other romantic colleagues, Chopin, Liszt, and Schumann. And I was like, I'm home, I got nothing to do. I'm going to learn a bunch of Mendelssohn. So that's what I did. And then I read a lot about it. And the Rondo Capriccioso is a piece I've been playing since I was a kid. And I learned that it was written for her. In the Larry Todd biography, he says that she then wrote these pieces for him. And it was only that one line that I could find that led me on this little hunt to find her music. And it's the only piece I know of that exists. There's a sonata online as well that she played for Robert Schumann, which he said was great. But outside of that, I'm actually trying to dig up more of her music right now. I've been writing to libraries and seeing what I could do because I believe there's got to be more, and I'm interested to see what happens.
Amazing. Well, as you said, now there's no way our audience members have to come to this concert to
They
experience
have to
the beauty
come.
of the music.
That's right.
Um, Before, kind of going back to the point of the Harlems and your relationship together, you've mentioned it's a quartet you've performed with quite a bit. Um, but this is not the only quartet that you've performed with, collaborated with other quartets, whether it be a group that travels together or four musicians coming together for a particular concert. Can you describe a little bit about kind of, especially a group that's maybe not perform that you've not performed with, or members that don't perform together, kind of maybe some of the unique challenges that on that first rehearsal you face, kind of getting acquainted with a new group as a pianist? What are some of the things that you're being really sensitive to and listening out for as you're learning a piece together with a group perhaps that you're not as familiar with, such as the Harlem Quartet?
Just to clarify, like learning a piece that I've known well, or learning a new piece together.
Both for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is something I do all the time. I mean, the Schumann Quintet, I've played a lot with various groups. I'm actually playing it this week in Germany with a German-based string quartet that I've never met before, and I'm interested to know what that's going to be like. It's again, it's a who knows situation, and every situation like that is different. And I think one thing that one needs to do is just be able to adapt. I mean, that's what we do as pianists. We adapt to the instrument, the acoustic. We don't take our own instruments on tour with us, so we have to be at the mercy of the piano and the setting, the environment. And for me, when I rehearse with the group I don't know, I like to I don't like to talk that much if possible. I like to try to listen. I like to hear ideas. Of course, if things that need to be said, then we do that. But I think a lot can be done with listening, and I often think sometimes talking too much can just make things a little more confused, and too many ideas get people maybe away from what their natural tendencies are to bring out, at least for me. And when I play, well, it's fun to play with preformed string quartets. I know you're in a string quartet.
Mhm.
That's what's cool about that is that usually the rehearsal has taken place before a lot of the string stuff, the bowings, the intonation. It's sort of figured out. It works, and then you can kind of go further with a pianist, or a string quartet. You can sort of take it somewhere. When and I notice there's a big difference when you play with preformed string quartets and just ad hoc groups, and they have pluses and minuses. They have you can really get great performances from people that are not a string quartet, but usually it takes a little bit more time, a little more figuring out.
Mhm.
And I mean, a piece like the Schumann Quintet, everybody knows it. The Harlem Quartet knows it backwards and forwards. I know it. So we can actually experiment with it. We can explore. We can go with the moment.
Mhm.
The Amy Beach Quintet, on the other hand, is a piece that's less familiar,
Mhm.
and therefore it requires a different kind of focus, a different kind of level of intensity and rehearsal. We need to, we've played it before, but it's definitely something we continue to work hard on.
Yeah. Well, sort of shifting gears just a little bit, as mentioned before, not only you're a performer, but you're a composer. And while we won't be hearing one of your pieces for this concert, I just wanted to ask, the question. You've composed works for solo instruments, as all the way up to large scale, massive orchestral works, and I'm just curious about how your career, specifically as a chamber musician, and your experiences as a chamber musician, how has that influenced your compositional career?
Yeah, I mean, greatly. I've always thought my whole life that the living the double life of the pianist composer, the two elements kind of feed off and fuel each other, and I find that both my playing influences my composing. Plus, if people don't like my playing, I can tell them, well, I'm really a composer, and I can do the same. I always have an out. But no, in all seriousness, um, actually, that is one of the most useful things as a composer is to play so much chamber music with strings, with winds, with singers. I mean, to get to know the repertoire. I mean, that is a huge part of being a composer, just to study the repertoire, to study different styles, to play new music, but not only new music, and just to get to know how the instruments work. Because, of course, as a pianist, I don't play, the alto flute, I don't play the harp, I don't play the double bass, but I have friends who play that. So,
Mhm.
when I'm writing for these instruments, I'm often always consulting people I know to help me, uh, you know, write more idiomatically for these instruments because I don't actually play them. It's something I've been doing a lot with this string piece I wrote for cello and seven strings. That's going to be done in Sedona next month with my duo partner Nicholas Kanalakis, who's a great cellist that I play with, and he's basically like line by line editing the cello parts that I write for him. He puts he takes it and he'll say, oh, how about this or how about that or this is easier like this, and I tend to be very flexible and trusting of thinking that someone knows better, knows what makes it sound better.
Yeah, very helpful to have him in as well as other colleagues as a resource, um,
Yes.
for sure. So, one question I've been asking our previous guests, I'm curious, for you, do you have a specific chamber music experience, either as a listener, a performer, or a teacher, that holds special significance to you? Perhaps an early memory that really sort of ignited the chamber music flame for you at all, or?
Yeah, that's such a really great question. I have so many. Well, I was lucky as a kid to just hear so many concerts and of really great artists, people like Leon Fleischer and Richard Good and Menachem Pressler and Claude Frank and Pamela Frank and all these um, people play chamber music. I think for me, what really sparked my love, I mean, I had the love, but what really kind of started the whole chamber music thing with me was going to really interesting summer festivals when I was a student, like the Ravinia Staines Institute, which is you're thrown in an environment with 20 string players and
Mhm,
you have to put together a Shostakovich piano quintet or a Fauré piano quartet,
mhm.
and you have to, like we were talking about, navigate the energy of the room, not only try to play your part well, but also listen to all the other insane people in the room trying to find each other. I would say it was that place really kind of threw me into the fire with chamber music, getting coachings, and also the Marlborough Music Festival, which I went for 3 summers. That also was another sort of eye-opening place when, again, you just sort of you're put into these groups with people that have been doing this for 50 years, and they play with you like a colleague, which I think is the best way to learn.
Yeah.
As a that's probably um, I mean, it's nice to be told what to do, but the best way to learn is just to do it alongside someone who's really great at it. I think I can't stress that enough. Play um, when I teach chamber music, I love going to festivals where I can actually play with students now because that's just a really fun way of sort of teaching, but not really teaching, just kind of interacting and kind of interacting with the new generation.
Right. You can do some traditional teaching, but also for them, they can kind of learn by osmosis, right? Just playing with you and experiencing the music together with you.
Yeah, and I learned from playing with them. It's the same with when I was doing it as a student.
Right. Well, I know you're busy, but I had just kind of one more question for you before um, take off, because you mentioned Mendelssohn is a particular favorite of yours, and I have to say he's a favorite of mine too. And as a string quartet musician, we're always kind of, at least in my colleagues, we're always kind of debating and discussing which is the greatest of the Mendelssohn quartets. And so, from a pianist perspective, I'm going to ask, maybe you can help kind of level the playing field here. Is there a particular Mendelssohn string quartet that you're particularly fond of? And if so, why?
Oh my God. Wow. Put me on the spot there. Mendelssohn Street, you're asking a pianist about string quartet repertoire. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Um, well, I've always been okay. Well, I feel like this is just the sort of traditional answer, but I feel like I love the D major quartet. I love the A minor quartet.
yeah,
I love the F the F minor quartet is one of the greatest things ever.
yeah,
But that early E flat quartet is also unbelievable.
yeah,
So basically, I've named four quartets that I don't know if I had to pick one, it'd probably be the F minor, but the A minor is also amazing.
yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
Oh, well, it changes. But I would say
Yeah.
that right now I'm on the E flat major, Opus 44 number 3, a kick of that right now. But you're right. I mean, the F minor is just so spectacular, and especially just the fact it's so raw and unedited, and just boom, it just happened. Um, yeah, it's an incredible. You can't go wrong. But no, that's very helpful, and I'll make sure to pass that back to my colleagues. That they're all.
Oh, you all taking bet. Is there money on this? Is there?
No, no money on it. Not. No.
No, I'm only sad I can't play any of those pieces. I feel jealous of you right now that you can actually play any of these Mendelssohn string quartets. But we can play the sextet, which I play. We can play the piano quartets, which he was like 11 or 12 when he wrote.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable to think that he was as precocious as he was and didn't live very long.
Right.
But no, you inspired me. I'm gonna go listen to some Mendelssohn string quartets when we get off the Zoom.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Michael. And thank you for joining me, this evening in Germany and this afternoon here. And thank you to our Dallas Chamber Music Society community members for tuning in, continuing to tune in to these chamber music chats. Please join us Sunday evening. Again, that's Sunday, not our usual Monday time, but Sunday evening, March 26th, to hear Michael, as well as the Harlem Quartet perform at Caruth Auditorium at Southern Methodist University. We can't wait to welcome you there.